So to start things off, I apologize, but the frame rate for a lot of these clips are really low. I have no idea why. I tried everything that I could think of, but for some reason, when recording Frostpunk specifically, sometimes the frame rate just sucks. It doesn't suck in-game, and I've tried at the same resolution, at high settings, even stuff that really puts a strain on my computer on other games and record it, and it's fine. It's just Frostpunk, so I'm really sorry about that. Yo y'all, this is Wasabi7, and today I'm going to tell you about another one of my all-time favorite games, Frostpunk. By the way, for this review, I'll mostly be focusing on the A New Home campaign. There are others, but this is universally accepted as the main one. Frostpunk is a real-time strategy city-building survival game, an interesting combination that results in a round of city skylines that has a game over screen. It's set in an alternate timeline in the 19th century with a few differences, but the overwhelmingly obvious and impactful one being that the winter of 1886 never ended, and in fact got colder and colder, throwing not just Britain, where the game is set, but the entire world into a flash ice age. In this game, you indirectly play as the leader of a group of 80 refugees who fled the hopeless, snowy wasteland of London in search of a generator, one of many towering steam-powered heaters scattered across the land. When you reach the area, you start with nothing but an unpowered generator, piles of wreckage and coal, and 80 people, some even being children. In the beginning of the game, the first and only thing that you can do is collect supplies. As the leader, you can command people to do various tasks that will help with construction and maintenance of the city. There's four main resources: coal, wood, metal, and food. Coal, which is arguably the most essential resource, is used to power the generator. Run out of coal and the generator shuts down, leaving your people to the well below freezing temperatures, even in their shoddy tents as they sleep. Food is obviously necessary for your people to survive, or they'll starve and die. Wood and metal are used for corresponding buildings that require them, such as tents or workshops. Speaking of which, another fundamental part of the game is research. Researching needs workshops, which allow you to make things like coal mines, steel mills, and wall drills to find deeper resources once there's none left that are easy enough to pick up by hand. But you can also research more intriguing things, such as the observation balloon. The observation balloon allows you to send out squads of people into the Frostland to look for more survivors and supplies, further away from your city. This is also a large part of discovering lore to the game. With each successfully completed expedition, the scouts leave a journal that you can read, giving you more insight on the world around you. Now, with all this work and all this desolate wasteland and hopeless despair, you might be thinking, what's the point? To work 8 to 10 hours a day every day of hard labor in dangerously cold situations as you watch people around you slowly get sick and die? Well, your citizens think the exact same thing. That's why there's these two meters, hope and discontent. Hope being basically long-term happiness, a sort of will things ever get better meter, and discontent showing how unhappy people are going to be to go to work, or, worse yet, coming home every day. The main way to both help and harm both of these meters is to sign laws. As the leader, you have ultimate power, the ability to pass laws without question, at least at first. Some laws are more like goals or decisions, like public house or graveyard, which simply allows the construction of a public house, which people are very happy to be able to hang out at after a long day of work, or of a graveyard, which softens the hope blow when people die. Other laws are much more impactful. Child labor, for example, will generate large amounts of discontent and decrease hope if signed, but will allow for a much greater amount of work to be done each day, which, in turn, could end up being good for everyone. Another extreme example is 24-hour shift, forcing some or all of your citizens to work non-stop for a whole day and night. While this generates massive amounts of discontent, it's saved me more than once from running out of a certain vital resource. Ultimately, laws can be the most important part of the game. They can instill a sense of permanent hope and loyalty in your people, but also, if you let hope drop too low or discontent rise too high, can be your undoing. From this point on, there are spoilers for both the story and endgame mechanics. If you don't want the game spoiled, please advance to the time on screen now. Eventually, the scouts you send out will discover large groups of refugees who didn't make it to a generator from London and begin bringing them back. Unfortunately, though, the refugees mention a sheer lack of cities. There is no one waiting for you in the Frostland, no government to come save you. You are truly alone. This information quickly spreads through your people, and your hope takes a massive hit. So much, in fact, that groups of your people, who are now calling themselves the Londoners, believe the situation is so hopeless out here in the middle of nowhere that they think going back to the ghost town that is London would be a better alternative. At this point, the Londoners will give you a deadline. By a certain day, anyone calling themselves a Londoner will leave, potentially leaving the rest of you badly stretched for workers. From now until then, low hope and high discontent will motivate people to join the Londoners, and the opposite will entice them to stay. Obviously, this becomes a very immediate issue, as neglect could cause more than half of your population to just up and leave. Even after that, though, whether everyone stayed or anyone left, you and your citizens will begin to notice that the weather isn't getting any better, or even staying bad for that matter. It's getting worse. In fact, it's bad enough that the people you stationed at the observation balloon are saying that there's a storm on its way, some kind of super blizzard carrying colder temperatures than has been seen yet. Coincidentally, it'll also be around this time that the lawbook introduces to you the option to choose an over-the-line policy. Over-the-line policies are split into two categories, faith and order. The faith tree introduces a religious nature into your city, telling those that by the will of God will salvation from this frozen hell lie, starting out as simple on-site shrines, and ending as cult-like zealousness, seeing the death of any non-believers, enshrining you, the leader, as a pope-like, almost messiah figurehead. Order, on the other hand, introduces a form of government extremely like that of communism, glorifying the workers but hypocritically having a single dictator, in this case you, to lead them. This starts off with the inclusion of motivational speaker towers at worksites and ends with summary executions to any who are not able to pull their weight, so that the weak don't destroy the strong. That's not to say, by the way, that the game ever requires you to go to either extreme. In fact, you can beat the game without signing a single over-the-line policy. However, all of them do come with great advantages, and the final policy for both tree results in a replacement of the hope meter with devotion or obedience, depending on your choice. Keep in mind, though, that if you lose the game, you won't simply be banished, but a gruesome cutscene will play showing your execution by your angry citizens. The A New Home campaign ends when or if you survive a blizzard, even if you only have a single surviving citizen. The chances of you maintaining power to that point without being overthrown are quite low, though. If you skipped ahead, welcome back. Apart from A New Home, there are 3 other campaigns and 2 DLC campaigns. The main 3 show the world of Frostpunk from the perspectives of different but still very interesting groups of survivors. Refugees is the most similar to A New Home, but where you instead have a constant flow of refugees and eventually have to deal with their social disputes amidst managing a city. The Arcs is from the perspective of something more resembling a science outpost than a city. You have to protect large buildings of seedlings that were saved from the frozen apocalypse, so as to replant them if the world ever allows such a thing again. Winter Home is basically what happens after you game over. Instead of playing as the initial leader, you play as the one that overthrew him, and are now stuck with a giant, horribly planned city that's just undergone rebellion. This campaign, in my experience, is by far the hardest. The first DLC campaign is called The Last Autumn, and shows the perspective of an outpost of workers and their struggles to build a generator before the impending doom of the longest winter ever hits. The last campaign and second DLC campaign is called On the Edge, where you play as the leader of a colony sent out by the leader of A New Home, which I thought was pretty neat. I haven't actually played this one yet, but I'm quite excited to. This is post-recording with Sap. Yes, I'm recording now. But anyways, I have actually played this DLC now. It was fucking good. You'll notice I mentioned Winter Home as being the hardest one. That's not at all to say the others are easy. Quite the opposite, in fact. This game isn't as hard as some you'll find, but it's definitely displays a challenge for most. It took me a great deal of tries to beat A New Home, and I've never actually beaten Winter Home. On the other hand, though, The Last Autumn only took me a couple tries, and Refugees only took one. Next, I'll talk about the music. As with all games in the all-time favorite series so far, Frostpunk has one of the best video game soundtracks out there, especially for an RTS city-building survival game, all genres of which I tend to find pretty mediocre music in. The thing about Frostpunk's music, though, is that it definitely fits the theme. The music consists of ominous or extremely sorrowful violins and cellos for a vast majority of songs. They're all amazing, but there have been a few times where I decide to leave the music off if I've been playing the game a lot lately, since the constant tone of despair can get old after a while. Lastly, I'll mention the graphics. Being a city-building game, the graphics aren't quite as important as the UI or overall functionality of the game, and I think that was definitely understood in Frostpunk. The graphics go for a basic realistic approach with an overall theme of ice and soot, and it works very well for it. Nothing crazy, but for what it is, it works quite well. Overall, Frostpunk is a game I'd recommend to anyone who likes an unorthodox challenge or who likes city-building games, unless they play those games because of the more relaxed pace. Even then, though, depending on the person, I still might, since the game does have a Serenity difficulty mode that has an overall greater resource gain, less chance of sickness, higher temperatures, and so on. This is one of those games that I think almost anyone should at least try due to its unique and extremely well-built nature. So, I think that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe to join the Chorus Rebellion. If you have any suggestions or for other games for me to review, or just to make these reviews more enjoyable, don't hesitate to leave a comment. I do also have a donation link in the description, so if you want to support me, that would be greatly appreciated. That's about it. See ya. And discontent showing how unpeople happy are. That's a good one. Starting out as simple as on. That's a doozy right there.